You have spent your entire career making sure nothing goes wrong. Every calculation checked twice. Every system tested 100 times. Every possible failure mapped out on paper before it can happen in space. That is your job. That is what you do. And on the night of April 13th, 1970, everything goes wrong anyway. Not slowly, not with warning, all at once, without mercy. 330,000 kilometers from the nearest hospital, the nearest runway, the nearest anything. 3 men are up there, and the only thing standing between them and dying alone in the dark is you, in a room full of people who refuse to say the word impossible. This is the story of 13 days that should have ended in tragedy, and the reason they didn't. Act 1. The launch. Cape Kennedy, Florida, April 11th, 1970, 1:13 in the afternoon. You are not at the launch site. You are in Houston, Texas, seated at your console in mission control. Headset on, coffee going cold beside your keyboard. You have been at this console since before sunrise. Around you, 200 people are doing the same thing. Eyes on screens, fingers on switches, voices low and steady, running through checklists that have been memorized so thoroughly they have become a kind of muscle memory. On the main screen at the front of the room, you watch Saturn V rise. It is the most powerful machine human beings have ever built. 36 stories tall, 6 million pounds of metal, fuel, and ambition, and it moves like something alive, slow at first, almost reluctant, then faster and faster until it punches through the clouds and disappears into blue sky. The room exhales. You pick up your coffee. Take a sip. It is already cold. Apollo 13 is on its way to the moon, the third lunar landing in history. The mission is so routine. You tell yourself, as if sending men to the moon could ever be routine, that the television networks have declined to broadcast the launch live. America has seen this before. America has moved on. You have not moved on. You never move on. That is why you are good at this job. The crew, Commander Jim Lovell. Command Module Pilot Jack Swigert. Lunar Module Pilot Fred Hayes. 3 men you've trained with, eaten lunch with, argued over technical specifications within conference rooms that smelled of burned coffee and cigarette smoke. 3 men who are now, as of this afternoon, farther from Earth than almost any human being in history. For 2 days, everything is perfect. Systems nominal. Trajectory nominal. Crew in good spirits. Lovell jokes over the radio. Hayes is running a slight fever, but nothing serious. Swigert, who was added to the crew just days before launch as a last-minute replacement, has settled in smoothly. You go home on the evening of April 12th. Sleep well. Come back April 13th refreshed, confident. Everything is fine. You will remember thinking that. Everything is fine. Act 2 Houston. We've had a problem. April 13th, 9:07 in the evening, Houston time. The crew is 56 hours into the mission. They have just finished a live television broadcast, showing viewers back home how comfortable and weightless life in space can be. The networks passed on airing it. Not enough drama, they said. 9 minutes later, there is plenty of drama. You are at your console when you hear it. Not an explosion, because sound does not travel in space. What you hear is data. Numbers that were stable a moment ago, suddenly lurching sideways. Pressure readings dropping. Electrical current spiking. 2 fuel cells dropping offline simultaneously. Then the voice. Jack Swigert, calm as a man ordering breakfast. Houston, we've had a problem. Lovell repeats it a moment later, in case anyone missed it the first time. Houston, we've had a problem. Past tense, as if it is already over. As if it is a small thing that happened and now is done. It is not a small thing. You stare at your screen. In 13 seconds, you run through every explanation your brain can generate and discard them one by one. Instrumentation error. Sensor malfunction. Data dropout. But the numbers keep moving. Oxygen pressure in tank number 2, gone. Dropping towards 0 so fast it is almost elegant in its decisiveness. Tank number 1 beginning to bleed out as well. You key your mic. Your voice. You are proud of this later. Does not shake. Say again. Please. Lovell's voice comes back. And this time there is something underneath the calm. Not panic. Lovell does not panic. You have never once heard Jim Lovell panic. But something else. A weight. The weight of a man who has just looked out his window and understood something that has not yet reached the ground. Houston, we've had a problem. We've had a main B bus undervolt. You look across the room at your flight director. Gene Kranz. White vest. As always, he wears a different white vest for every mission. Sewn by his wife. He is already standing. Already moving toward the center of the room. Already doing what Gene Kranz does when things go wrong, which has become the calmest person in any room he occupies. He catches your eye. One look. You both know. This is not a sensor malfunction. Then Lovell's voice again. And this time the weight is fully audible. We are venting something out into space. Oxygen. They are venting oxygen. The lifeblood of the command module. The system that generates electricity. Produces water. Keeps 3 men breathing. Is leaking out into the void at a rate that your calculations, running now at full speed in the back of your mind, tell you will reach zero in approximately 2 hours and 15 minutes. 2 hours and 15 minutes of power. 2 hours and 15 minutes of oxygen. After that, nothing. 330,000 kilometers from Earth. Moving away at over 3,000 kilometers per hour. No rescue possible. No repair imaginable. The lunar landing is gone. That much is obvious in the first 30 seconds. Though no one says it aloud yet, because there are more urgent things to say aloud. Like, how do you keep 3 men alive long enough to bring them home? Kranz's voice comes over the loop. Steady, almost quiet. Let's work the problem. People, let's not make things worse by guessing. You pull your headset tighter, open a fresh page in your notebook, and you start working the problem. Act 3. The lifeboat. The lunar module is called Aquarius. It was designed to carry 2 men from lunar orbit down to the surface of the moon and back. It was designed to operate for 45 hours. It was never, not once, in any design meeting, in any engineering review, in any simulation you have ever run, designed to be a lifeboat. But it has one thing the command module no longer has: power. The decision is made within the hour. Move the crew into Aquarius. Shut down the command module to preserve whatever battery power remains, because the command module is the only way home, and it needs to be alive when the time comes to re-enter Earth's atmosphere. But that time is 3 days away, and for 3 days, 3 men need to eat and breathe and stay warm. Aquarius will have to do. You watch on your screen as Lovell, Swaggart, and Hayes move through the tunnel connecting the 2 spacecraft, pulling critical equipment with them. Lovell, who was 56 hours away from walking on the moon, who had been denied a lunar landing on Apollo 8 and had waited 2 years for this mission, says nothing about what he is leaving behind. He just works. You make a note of that. Just works. Now the calculations begin in earnest. And the news, as the numbers come in from every corner of mission control, is not good. Water. Aquarius has enough. Barely. If the crew uses an absolute minimum, 42 hours worth at normal consumption, the mission will take at least 96 hours to complete. You start rationing immediately 6 ounces per man per day, less than what most people drink in a single glass at breakfast. Power, 17% of normal consumption. Everything non-essential goes dark. Guidance systems. Cabin heat. The temperature inside Aquarius drops toward freezing. The crew begins to shiver. You can hear it sometimes, faintly, underneath their voices on the radio. You do not mention it. There is nothing to be done about the cold. Carbon dioxide. This is the one that keeps you up at night, literally, because you will not go home for the next 72 hours. Aquarius carries lithium hydroxide canisters to scrub CO2 from the air. Enough for 2 men for 45 hours. There are 3 men who need 96 hours of breathable air. The command module has additional canisters, but they are square. Aquarius's receptacles are round. You write this in your notebook and stare at it for a moment. Square canisters, round holes. 3 men slowly poisoning themselves with their own breath. Then you pick up your pencil again, because somewhere in this building, in a back room that no one ever visits during normal operations, there is a team being assembled right now with one instruction from Gene Kranz. Figure out how to fit a square peg into a round hole, using only what the crew has on board the spacecraft. Plastic bags, cardboard from a flight manual cover, suit hoses, duct tape. The solution, when it comes, is almost embarrassingly simple. A makeshift adapter, built on the ground, photographed, the instructions read up to the crew over the radio. Level and Hayes assemble it in the cabin with cold, clumsy fingers. It works. You exhale for the first time in what feels like days. Act 4. The Dark Side of the Moon. April 14th, 2:43 in the morning. The PC+2 burn, the most important rocket firing of the mission, and it has to be executed manually by a crew using a spacecraft never designed for navigation, guided by calculations done on the ground and read up to them over the radio, in a vehicle where most of the computers have been shut down to save power. Level flies Aquarius by hand, using the position of the Earth in his window as a reference point the way sailors once used stars. 5 minutes of engine burn. If the angle is even slightly wrong, the trajectory changes. The spacecraft misses Earth. 3 men drift into deep space and are never found. The burn lasts 5 minutes and 59 seconds. It is perfect. You check the numbers 3 times, then a 4th time, because you do not trust anything right now, including mathematics. But the numbers do not change. Apollo 13 is on a free return trajectory, looping around the moon and falling back toward Earth on a path that, barring any further disasters, will land in the Pacific Ocean in approximately 3 days. 6 hours later, on the morning of April 14th, Apollo 13 reaches its closest point to the moon, 254 kilometers above the surface. Lovell, who trained for 2 years to walk on that surface, looks down at it through his window. He does not say very much about what he sees. He makes a few observations for the record, notes some craters, describes the Terminator, where lunar day meets lunar night. Later, in the transcripts, you will read what he actually said in that moment, quietly, almost to himself. I wonder if we'll get back. Act 5. Bringing them home. 3 days. 3 days of controlled emergency. 3 days of problems arriving one at a time, sometimes 2 at a time, occasionally 3 at a time, in a room full of people in Houston solving each one before the next one fully arrives. The navigation problem, the power budget problem, the water problem, the re-entry angle problem, because the command module heat shield has been sitting in near-zero temperatures for 3 days, and no one is completely certain it has not been compromised. And if it has been compromised, the crew will burn up during re-entry. And there is absolutely nothing you can do about that particular possibility except calculate the odds and decide they are acceptable. You decide they are acceptable. You also do not sleep. You do not go home. You eat vending machine food at your console and drink coffee that is always cold by the time you remember it exists. Around you, the room operates in the same way. A low-level controlled urgency that never tips into panic. Because Gene Kranz has made it structurally impossible to panic in this room. Panic, in Kranz's mission control, is treated as an engineering problem like any other. You identify it. You isolate it. You route around it. April 17th, the final day, the crew transfers back into the command module, powers it up on battery reserves that, by your calculation, are just barely sufficient, jettisons the service module, and for the first time, they can see the damage from the outside. One entire panel blown away, equipment hanging loose. The explosion, which you knew intellectually was catastrophic, now has a visual that the crew reads up to you with voices that are, for the first time, not entirely steady. Lovell, there's one whole side of that spacecraft missing. You write it down. You do not say anything back because there is nothing to say. The service module is gone. The command module is all that is left. It will work or it will not. Then they jettison Aquarius, the lifeboat that was never designed to be a lifeboat, that kept 3 men alive for 4 days through a combination of engineering improvisation and sheer refusal to accept the obvious conclusion. Level keys the mic one last time before separation. Farewell, Aquarius, and we thank you. You write that down too. April 17th, 6:07 in the evening. The command module hits the upper atmosphere at 40,000 kilometers per hour. Communications blackout, normal during re-entry. The plasma sheath around the capsule blocks all radio signals. Standard blackout duration, 3 minutes. The room is absolutely silent. At 3 minutes and 30 seconds, you are still staring at a silent radio. At 3 minutes and 45 seconds, someone behind you clears their throat. At 4 minutes and 30 seconds, the room has been quiet so long it begins to feel like a held breath, like if anyone speaks. The capsule might hear it and decide not to come back. Then the voice, swaggered, crackling through static. But there. Okay, Joe. 2 words. The most beautiful 2 words you have ever heard in your life. The room comes apart. People who have not shown emotion in 4 days are suddenly showing all of it at once. Men who have been awake for 70 hours straight are grabbing each other, laughing, crying, doing both simultaneously. Cigars materialize from desk drawers. Someone is playing America the Beautiful on a harmonica that has apparently been in his pocket this entire time. Gene Kranz, standing at the center of mission control with his white vest and his jaw that has been set in the same determined line for 4 days straight, puts his face in his hands. You sit at your console and look at your notebook. Pages of calculations, contingencies, failure modes mapped and remapped, numbers that added up, when you first saw them, to 3 men dying in space, and that you spent 4 days rearranging until they added up to something else. 6 minutes later, the parachutes open over the Pacific. Apollo 13 splashes down 6.5 kilometers from the recovery ship USS Iwo Jima. All 3 crew members are alive. After flower splashdown, inflated place, and slash lamps and conferences, electricity, fine. Unscoring. Epilogue, after splashdown. Lear, days later. After debriefs and the press conferences, in the phone call from President Nixon, you will be asked to describe what happened. Reporters will want drama. They will want the moment you knew. The moment of crisis. The moment the room gave up hope. You will tell them the room never gave up hope. Not because the people in it were fearless, but because they were too busy to be afraid. Because Gene Kranz had structured the problem in such a way that there was always a next step. Always something to calculate. Always a reason to pick up the pencil and keep working. The reporters will nod and write something down and then ask again about the moment you gave up hope. Because that is the story they came to write. You will try a different answer. You will tell them about the CO2 filter, the square canister and the round hole and the roll of duct tape and the cardboard ripped from a flight manual cover. The solution that should not have worked. Cumbled together from garbage by men with frozen fingers in a crippled spacecraft. Assembled in 12 minutes based on instructions read over the radio from a team on the ground who had never built the thing before either. That, you'll tell them, is the moment you knew. Not knew that they would survive, but knew that this room, these people, were not going to let them die without exhausting every last option first. Every last option. Every last piece of cardboard, every last strip of duct tape, every last calculation on every last page of every last notebook. Apollo 13 never landed on the moon. By every conventional measure, it was a failed mission. The science was not done. The samples were not collected. The flag was not planted. But 1,400 engineers, flight controllers, technicians, And support staff worked for 4 days without sleep to bring 3 men home from 330,000 kilometers away using equipment that was never designed for the job. NASA called it a successful failure. You prefer a different word. You prefer human, because that is what you saw in that room. For 4 days straight. Not genius. Not technology. Not the power of the American space program, though all of those things were present. What you saw was people refusing to accept the answer the universe was trying to give them, and writing a different one.